Welcome to another episode of OG55. Like we said in many videos, we are doing a new thing here on the channel where we are taking topics from members of the channel and we're dedicating entire videos to those topics. One of those topics was from our OG55 contributor himself, Mr. Seymour Duck. So we felt, hey, you know what? Why not have Mr. Duck on? We're going to break down, answer his question, talk about it up next on this episode of OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. We are taking member-picked topics. This one is from the one and only Mr. Seymour Duck. We're going to talk about it, break it down. But before we do, Mr. Duck, where can everybody at home find you on social media? It's great to have you back, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be back here and nerd out with you. And you can find me at, so I have a site now, mrduck.social, where you can find all my social links. So there you go. Just go there and everything's there.
There it is, mrduck.social. Check him out. An amazing resource on all things finance. He gets into Japanese companies, Disney, all that good stuff. So make sure you support Mr. Duck. And he's also on X and Blue Sky. So make sure you follow and support him. All right, Mr. Duck, let's go ahead and see. This is your topic that you posted the other day. It says here, how about this for a topic? Sonic 3 seems to have a better reaction than Mufasa. Anime is everywhere. Japanese VTubers are having sold out concerts in the US, and Mario is breaking records. Is Japanese pop culture taking over? Is it nostalgia, a cultural shift, or are people over Disney? Or maybe just embracing more Japanese stuff while still loving Disney could be a great discussion. I couldn't agree more with you, Seymour. It is a great discussion. I really, really love this topic. It's interesting because there is, I feel, something going on. But I'll let you kind of start this off. Where's your headspace at in regards to this?
Well, I've always been a fan of Japanese culture, since I was born in the 90s. And in the 90s, it's very weird. In the 90s, tech companies were Japanese. Those were the big ones. And video game companies now were big too, right? You had your Nintendo, you had Sega, and you had Sony. And those were big back in the 90s. And then it got shifted to American companies. Now it's your Apple and your Microsoft. But in the media side, I'm seeing that being shifted. A lot of people like to watch anime, read manga, and VTubers are now exploding, getting that idol culture that's very popular in Japan, but now it's coming to the US. And I'm noticing like even video game IPs that were Japanese, like Nintendo and Sega, are now being idolized in more Hollywood films. And I don't know if this is a culture shift or people are liking it, especially in the US. I'm noticing a lot more where people like Sonic 3 more than Mufasa. Where back when Sonic came out, nobody was watching the first original one, right? It had a low audience, but now it's like after COVID, we're shifting more into a different area where we like Mario more. It made over $1 billion, 1.3 billion, if I'm not mistaken. And then now you have Sonic 3 in America doing really well, doing better than Mufasa, and it was a lower budget film. And I'm noticing, like, even online, a lot of people are criticizing Mufasa, doing all these, like, Disney, unfortunately, is posting saying it's the number one movie in America, and then they get noted, no, it's not the number one movie in America. Sonic 3 is the number one movie in America, outpacing that during the holidays. And a lot of these fans are coming in, but I'm just noticing a lot of people are praising Sonic 3 more than Disney usual, at least in America. And currently, when I wrote that, the international numbers weren't out for Sonic, so Sonic 3 box office numbers were better. But now the international audience came up bigger than for Sonic 3, and that's overtaken it. But still, in America, North America, domestically, Sonic 3 is doing pretty good. And I didn't see this back, as I mentioned, in the first time around. But now I'm seeing it, Sonic 3 being so popular. All the, all the Japanese video game IPs, it's like now mainstream. You want to play video games more. And then Studio Ghibli now getting awards for their movies, which you have never seen that before in America. You only see that in Japan, and I mentioned the VTubers. Now it's like a common thing. You get like the most popular VTuber on YouTube has over 4 million subscribers.
Well, it's wild, Seymour. You're right. There's a shift. The Western audiences, I think, are really embracing Japanese culture, and I think overall Asian pop culture in general. It's kind of wild to me. It's like even like with Star Wars, right? Like Star Wars, since Disney has taken over Star Wars, it's had a rocky kind of road. Now, look, I mean, these movies have made a lot of money. Even if you don't like the sequel trilogy, they all made over $1 billion and all that, but the most critically acclaimed, like universally loved Star Wars stuff came from like things like Star Wars Visions, which were from various animation studios. And some of the most creative stuff that we've seen from Star Wars came from those Japanese anime studios. So, I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting. You in your question, you mentioned, do you think that people are kind of falling out of love for Disney and more into this Japanese pop culture? I don't think they're necessarily falling out of love with Disney, but I do think Disney does have increasing competition with Japanese and in general Asian content. I think now, especially when we're dealing with social media and the internet age, where people have all this content at their fingertips, no longer do we depend on NBC, CBS, Fox, we don't depend on the TV to like feed us the content anymore. Like, I can go on YouTube, I can go on websites and get content from South Korea or wherever, Japan. And I think that companies like Disney, including Universal and Warner Brothers and all these big studios, are finding themselves in a position where they're competing now big time with a lot of these Asian, production companies and what have you. I mean, one of the biggest shows right now out is Squid Games. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I know it's on Netflix, which is American, but I mean, that says a lot. One of Netflix's biggest shows is Korean. I'm a big Kpop guy, right? And I'm going to show you some numbers here, Seymour. I mean, this is unbelievable, bro. Absolutely unbelievable. Give me just a second. I mean, you would not believe. Give me just a second here. The numbers this is the K-pop group Blackpink, which I'm a huge fan of. Their song "Doo Doo Doo," 2.2 billion views. Billion with a B. Okay. I honestly, I'm a YouTuber. You don't see numbers like that very often. This is the music video. The dance practice video has 506 million views. The freaking dance practice video. Mm-hmm. I mean, these are insane numbers, Seymour. And, these Japanese artists, well, they're South Korean, obviously Blackpink, but Japanese artists, Japanese content, South Korean content, performers, you were saying VTubers, they are really taking, I think, Western culture by storm. And a lot of these companies like Disney, I think, really should sit up and take notice. Now, like you posed the question, are they falling out of love with Disney? I don't think so, but I mean, this is major competition. But what say you, sir?
Yeah, even Bruno Mars, right? He's even expanding to the Asian culture, right? He does a lot of now commercials for a discount store in Japan, and it's a very catchy tune. And you also have him doing collaborations with people from the K-pop group. Like the newest song that just came out.
Oh, APT with Rose. Yeah,
exactly, and that was a hit, right?
Huge, yeah.
And if he did that on his own, that I don't think that would have been a hit, But you got that Asian culture coming in from South Korea, that K-pop, and some Americans, or North Americans, because I'm Canadian, find that very interesting. I like the Asian culture, the quality in the music, the movies, TV shows, video games. It has a high standard that reminds me of Disney when they do high standard quality. And I think people are missing that with some of the content they were getting in Hollywood, and their palette is now expanding.
Yeah.
of viewing things and hearing things, and they're going to other countries to view it. And Japan, South Korea, they're there, and it's doing really well. And I've seen this shift after COVID. I'm seeing the shift for video games. You know, people are now streaming more often. People are playing video games more often. People don't want to go when the COVID happened. You didn't want to go out more. So
Right.
this shift of like expanding your horizon of entertainment, they looked elsewhere, and I'm not surprised they went to Japan. At least some people that I've noticed, they've gone to Japan, and now they're becoming hits.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the pandy, I think it changed a lot. I think people were in their houses locked in, especially out here in California. We were shut down for 400 and some odd days or something crazy like that, over a year at least. But I think people had a lot of time on their hands to sort of check out other things, and they did. And they came across a lot of other cultures' content, and they were blown away by it. One of the things, you know, I talk a lot about K-pop here on the channel. I really did fall in love with it, and it's like you were saying, a lot of the content from like Japan or like South Korea is really high quality. And when it comes to like something like K-pop, not only is the production quality fantastic, but even the way their celebrities and their artists kind of behave and carry themselves, it's different than American artists. You know, when you hear a group like Kiss of Life or like Blackpink, who Blackpink is basically like the girl band Beatles at this point. They're international superstars. You would see these girls interviewed like right now, and as massive as they are, getting 2.2 billion views on a video. They're so humble. They seem like people that if you were to run into them, they would just be like an everyday like just a normal person, as opposed to the American celebrity. You know, I don't want to crap on American stuff too much, but the American celebrity does have this air of like, you know, like there's a separation there between the celebrity and the audience. You know, you're very much a fan when it comes to American celebrities. When it comes to K-pop, I've noticed these girls in the guy groups, they have a humbleness to them, and they feel way more down to earth. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what have you, but they feel like people that you'd want to spend time with. You know what I'm saying? Much different than that of like American celebrities, which most people don't really love the American celebrity. Most people enjoy American content, absolutely, but there's a little bit of a distaste for Hollywood in terms of their personality and how they behave. But what say you, sir?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's some celebrities. Unfortunately, like Snow White and Rachel Zegler, where they unfortunately need to get trained more in PR, public relations, and a disconnect from your professional job, which is, you know, talking about Snow White and how things are in your real life, because unfortunately people didn't like that, right?
True.
And when you look at K-pop, you can see the professionalism in that. You can see the professionalism in South Korea and Japan, and they disconnect from that. I see that in a lot of ways. They don't make it too personal for them, and people like their entertainment for their entertainment and not for what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you're right.
And you know, and a lot of people are getting slack, and Disney's getting a lot of slack for Snow White simply because of this, because of one person, the actor.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and I like Rachel. I do. I think she's beautiful. I think she's a sweetheart. But the thing with Rachel is that when you work for a company, you have an obligation to sort of play ball. You know what I'm saying? I have a 9-to-5 job. I can't be like talking to clients on the phone and like talking about like my political beliefs. You know what I'm saying? Like, there comes a certain level of like responsibility when you're working for somebody, right? Rachel, you know, she has a right to her political opinions, 1,000%, like we all do. But when you're promoting a new film for Disney or Warner Brothers or whoever it is, you have a responsibility to sort of just promote the film and not draw attention in a negative way to you. You know what I'm saying? Whether you agree with her or not is kind of irrelevant. It's really just about focus on the movie, promoting the movie, the content, and kind of do that. You have your political opinions, that's great, but you don't want to get that mixed up with everything else. And that gets you know, Disney in trouble. It gets her in trouble, and it leads to all these messes. It really, really does. So now I want to ask you, Seymour, like we will both agree. I mean, Japanese and the South Korean, content, whether it be film, TV shows, music, whatever. They set a high bar. I mean, they produce quality stuff. But do you think there's something else going on here beyond just the quality of the content? Do you think there's some sort of like shift in just overall mindset, or is it really just about like the quality, in your opinion?
There is. I think there's a small group of people that are looking for more conservative type of content. Unfortunately, I know some people don't want to hear it, but there are people that don't like Disney as much as they did in the past. They think they put too much focus on social justice issues, which is why it gave that emphasis on Rachel Zegler, because people don't want to see that. They just want to see good entertainment. And when they saw Inside Out 2, they got good entertainment. But unfortunately, some of the movies, they put too much emphasis on social justice and not quality. And when they're going to see, let's say, an anime or a video game, you don't get that type of issue, just get the quality. When I'm playing a Mario game, I don't see no social justice issues. It's just a good quality fun. And that's what people want. A small group of people, right, has that issue, and they are now, pushing more into, they're they're pushing away Hollywood for more a Japanese type of content, because it's more of what they think. They're more of their ideology of just good fun, no social issues, and they think that's good for them. Sometimes they think it's good for their kids. And if you watch, if you play video games like Mario, or you watch Studio Ghibli, these are just good entertainment. Yeah. Even if you read manga, or just listen to music, it's just good quality entertainment. There's nothing there attached to it for it to be an issue, where unfortunately a lot of people portray Disney now as being woke because of that.
Yeah, that is a thing for sure, and like the conservative movement has really latched on to Disney. As of late, I think they've kind of pulled back a little bit on that. Disney has pulled back on that. I think overall conservatives are sort of seeing that and pulling back a little bit. There are some creators out there that don't want to let go of that for obvious reasons, but for the most part, I think that is changing too, right? But like the thing I always loved about like the Japanese in particular, I've said this so many times in a lot of videos in the past too. I love the Japanese approach to, because you mentioned like, they're not worried about like, what's the word for it? Like, I don't know, like political correctness or this, that, and the other. And I think they're a little bit more open-minded too as a culture. And it's like interesting because when you have like animation, with the Japanese, they don't see animation as like, because American audiences, and it is changing, but it's still kind of there. American audiences see animation as like, it's still for kids. It's still like, it's a kid / like family thing, and it's separate like from like adult business, basically, right? Where the Japanese don't really see it that way. The Japanese see, right, as like it's a medium. So it could be for just kids, but it can also be very much for adults. And a lot of the anime you see is like brutal. There's sex, there's crazy like, violence and all that kind of stuff in that Japanese anime, and it's not for kids. So the Japanese really respect the art form a lot, and they don't downplay it. They don't see it as kids stuff. It can be, but it can also be something very much for adults. Is that something that you kind of notice too, Seymour? Is that they kind of approach animation much differently than American studios?
Oh, exactly. And even though I don't agree with it, some people think that animation's just for kids. I don't think so. I think animation's for everyone. We're getting to the point where everyone's watching, Family Guy, Simpsons, Bob's Burger. Those are not meant for kids, young kids. No. And those are great shows, entertainment, right? And it's for not everyone, but an older audience, for cartoons. But if your parents allow you to watch it, that's good. Yeah. My parents did, so that's great. But I'm not part of that group. But in Japan, it's always been like that. from the beginning. And it's kind of weird because when Pokemon came out, Digimon and Dragon Ball Z, that was catered to everyone in Japan. But then when it came to the US, it was more catered to the kids, which is odd because in Japan, like you said, it's more modernized. And then now we're getting more complex stories with Studio Ghibli. We're getting, and they're even, some people are shifting away from just reading regular books to manga. And some people don't even want to watch the animes because the manga is so good. Because sometimes they put in those long minutes of just waiting for something to happen, like in Dragon Ball Z. Have you ever seen Dragon Ball Z?
Yeah.
They got those. Yeah, they had to remake the whole thing to cut all those dead air out of non-storylines. But yeah, a lot of people, it's been shifting, and it was always modernized in Japan as that, and people are now embracing it more. And like I said, ever since COVID, especially North America, more and more that I see people around me, they're embracing it just like Japan is now embracing it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Seymour. I want to pick your brain on one thing too, because I think it has ramped up. I think I would agree with you. It has ramped up since the pandy, because I think like we were talking about how more people were at home and they had more access to K-dramas and stuff like that, and they got hooked on it, But I feel like, and I'm kind of curious what your take on this is. I feel like this Asian pop culture shift has been sort of decades in the making. Seeds were planted, and what I mean by that is like in the 80s when I was growing up, right? In the 80s when I was growing up, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, the 8-bit one, took this country by storm. I mean, the Nintendo was like unmatched, you know what I'm saying? And it really became a cultural thing here in America. And it's a Japanese company, it's a Japanese video game company, right? And I think that was sort of the beginning of all this, in my opinion. I think that was the beginning of this whole kind of movement, and it started with that. And then in the 90s, Pokemon came onto the scene, and Pokemon was massive. I mean, it's still massive, So I feel like this has sort of been, seeds were planted like decades ago, like when I was a kid. And, people my age grew up on Nintendo, and that stays with you your whole life, Do you feel like that's an element of it too? Do you feel like it kind of, like, would you agree or disagree that it kind of started back then and it's kind of like ramped up maybe a little bit more recently, but it's kind of been percolating for a little while?
Yes, and I actually think it's one of the reasons why the Mario movie and the theme parks are doing really well. Because when we were kids, Mario was huge. And then now Mario is huge again. And now everyone's like in more anime content, more anime entertainment, and now you're seeing that Mario is being success higher than it ever was. And I grew up with Nintendo, I grew up with Sega as well, and now we now have parents going to see Sonic 3 when they were playing Sega Genesis, and now their kids are now playing Sega, watching Sonic, playing all these things, and it's like we're gone full circle.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I love to see it. I think that's one of the beautiful things about the internet age is how we now have more access to that kind of stuff. There's a lot of crappy things on the internet. A lot of bad things come from the internet, like, a lot of, ugly trolling and things like that, right? But one of the good things I think that has come from the internet is the ability to connect and to kind of keep it on brand with Disney. It has made the world a small world after all, so to speak, where like everyone can kind of learn about other people's cultures and what they consume a lot easier now than ever, and that can even just be like, as a Californian, I might even know more about how it is to live in the Midwest now because I have access to information online and what have you. It kind of brings us all together into much more like, there's a little bit more or less of a culture shock than there would have been like 50, 60 years ago, So I like that element of it. People are much more familiar. Look, when I was a kid, Seymour, nobody knew what Lunar New Year was. Nobody knew what that was.
We didn't have the internet back then.
You didn't have the internet back then. Now, I mean, I live in California, very diverse, but I mean, it's so mainstream now. And it's like, even 20, 30 years ago. I mean, no one knew what that was back then, you know.
No,
So
yeah, even when you had the Nintendo system, you couldn't look up a guide and said, "How do I beat this game?" You had to go buy a book that gave you help, or Nintendo back in the day had a 1-800 number that you can call in and say, "Oh, you need help." But now with the internet, that got discontinued. No need for that. But with type of things like that, were like Pokemon, where Pokemon was coming out with different Pokemon, and we didn't know what was happening in Japan because we didn't have the internet when it first came out. And then slowly, once everyone got mainstream internet, we knew what the Pokemons were coming out because it came out in Japan first and then came out in North America. And now we have people from Japan as VTubers where we can just watch them live and interact with them easily, where before we couldn't do that. And the internet has now made it very easy for me to interact, even when I'm doing investing, right? I can talk to people from Japan who likes Nintendo, who likes Cover Corp, the VTuber company, and I can talk to them and how their experience is and how they're fans and I'm a fan, where before we couldn't do that. I couldn't understand their culture. They couldn't understand my culture. There was a disconnect, but now it's simply with a click of a button, I can talk to them.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's a beautiful thing. We all learn about each other this way, you know. And yeah, there's a lot of ugly things about the internet, but that is definitely one of the huge benefits to the internet. I think, you know, it really has brought us all together in that way, which is pretty awesome. So,
except when I go on Instagram and I get like 20 different spam of Japanese girls messaging me saying, "Hey, I think you're cute. I think this duck is cute."
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I get that too, man. I get a lot of that stuff like in my spam folder and stuff, like just constantly. It's always Instagram too. I don't get as much of it on like some of these other platforms, but Instagram and Threads, I get a lot. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. But any final thoughts before we head out of here, Seymour?
Yeah, I just find it fascinating that companies like Sega and Nintendo and like Sony, they were big in the 90s, 80s, right? 80s, 90s with the Walkman first came out, and then throughout the years they were unpopular. The Wii U was gonna, almost destroy Nintendo. Sega had a console, and then nobody bought it. They bought the PlayStation and the Xbox instead, and these companies almost went out of business. But now they're still here. Now they're bigger than ever, and I find it very fascinating that we have gone full circle, where the company's almost gone out of business, but now they're more popular than ever. Yeah. I find that very fascinating. Sonic 3 is doing really well. Internationally, not as much. In North America is where I see the shift. Sonic 3 doing really well, doing better than Mufasa, but internationally, people love Disney. It's still doing much better with the international crowd. Disney does cater worldwide, so every time I tell people when we look at Disney, we have to look at it as a worldwide audience, not just North America. But yeah, I just find it fascinating, and I am all for it because I can now talk to people that I like Nintendo. The VTubers are coming in the comments and they're talking to me, and they're embracing the culture that I like, and I'm all for this.
Yeah, no, well said. Well said. I completely agree with what you're saying. I've had a really good time learning about South Korean culture, pop culture through Kpop. Our good friend Lucas Kim, he's trying to get me into Kdrama, which I will definitely.
Yes, you should definitely go to Kdrama. That's what I did at COVID too. I forgot. That's the one thing I shifted to, watching Kdramas with my ex-fiance. Yeah. Kdrama. I was watching. My favorite one was Goblin.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've heard amazing things about Kdrama. I look, after K-pop, I'm sure I'll love it. So I'm gonna definitely check it out for sure. Absolutely. But you were saying that the one that you really liked was called Goblin?
Yeah, one of the actors from Squid Games is in there. Unfortunately, he's always in only one episode, and I want him in more episodes because he's my favorite Korean actor. But no, they always put him in one episode. The one thing I do want to state, though, is that I hope Hollywood doesn't destroy this type of culture. And I hope because I'm scared with Netflix. And I don't want to give spoilers out. But on season 2 of Squid Game, I felt like it was Disney making it with the budget because it did not feel like a full season to me. It felt like they did a part one and didn't have enough. Like, you know how some of the like Marvel or Star Wars where it should have had one or more, 2 episodes, 3 more episodes to get that full story. It felt like they took it out and intentionally for a cheaper budget so that they can create a season 3 with that next story. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
Not to give any spoilers, but and I don't like that. And I don't want them to tarnish the quality of it because the creator of the first season, right, which he did the second one, and he said he only did the second one because he needed money. The first one felt like a passion project. The second one did not. It felt like a money grab. Even though I did like it, I don't want Hollywood coming in and destroying it. When Nintendo released their Super Mario Brothers movie, the first one got destroyed by Hollywood. But the second time, the animated one, Nintendo was like no to a lot of the things Hollywood wanted to do. And I am grateful they do that because in Japan, the creatives have more control than the companies themselves. So when Nintendo creates their games, they have full control when they do it. When Studio Ghibli, same thing, full control. And I don't want Hollywood coming in and trying to control it and put their narratives and what they think is best because we're not watching it because of Hollywood. We're watching it because Nintendo is Nintendo. Right. We don't want to change that. And I'm hoping Hollywood doesn't change that. You know, because they almost did with Sonic. Because if you saw the first Sonic trailer that came out, it was terrible because he had that ugly Sonic. And people didn't want that. They wanted to Americanize Sonic. We don't want that. We want Sonic for Sonic.
Yes, thank you. Look, people fall in love with this stuff because it's a taste of that particular pop culture. And like if you go in there and you start to Americanize it, that takes all the not the fun out of it, but it takes all the distinctiveness of what I like Kpop because it is different than American music. Not that American music is bad. I love American music. I listen to Tyler the Creator, Kendrick. I like American music, but I listen to Kpop because it isn't American and it does offer something very different that I can't get with American stuff. So if you take, say, for example, Kpop and you turn it and you make it more super Americanized, then it just becomes American pop. Like I like the K in pop. You know, I want the Korean influence in there. If I'm getting Japanese content, I like the Japanese influence in that content. That's part of the magic, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly,
it's interesting. Now, real quick, Seymour, and I hate to end on this note, but I do feel like we are talking about the Asian pop culture and what have you. There, on a serious note, there was a really bad airline crash the other day in South Korea. 181 people were on board. I think it's called the Jeju Air Jet. I don't know if you heard about this, but only 2 people survived out of this whole thing. It's one of the deadliest airline crashes in South Korea. I think the deadliest since 1997. So I just wanted to say, you know, our thoughts and prayers and our hearts go out to the people of South Korea in regards to this, because this has been all over the news and it's been really, really heartbreaking to kind of see. But anything you want to add, Seymour, to that before we take off?
Unfortunately, I'm hearing it for the first time. So thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. It's a Jeju airliner and 181 people on board. 2 crew members were pulled from the crash alive, thankfully, but I mean, out of 181, that's not good. So really sad situation over there. And everyone here at OG55, we are thinking of you in South Korea. Horrible news. But Mr. Seymour Duck, I want to thank you, brother, for coming on. It's always a great time with you, sir. Loved your question. Love your question. Great stuff. But if you can remind everybody where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can find me at the website mrduck.social. You can find all my social links of Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, and X.
There he is. Make sure you follow this man, support him. He is family here at OG55. Thank you all so much for watching this episode. What are your thoughts on Japanese, South Korean, Asian pop culture in general, sort of making a huge impact here in America and the Western world? We would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your theories as to what is going on with this. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this episode of OG55, and until the next time.
Thank you for watching OG55. If you aren't already, consider becoming a member today.